All right, y'all. Can you hear me now? How's that? Okay. So let's roll this back. Um, Tonight, we're going to talk about the Iran deal, the Memorandum of Understanding, and how it's being hailed as a diplomatic breakthrough. And to be fair, avoiding war, getting out of war, lowering tensions around the world is something that most Americans, I think, can support. But we have history to look back on, and that teaches us that the true test of any deal or framework or agreement isn't the signing ceremony, isn't how people feel about it in the moment. It's the long-term outcome. So we're going to look at what supporters are celebrating, what critics are warning about, and how that could affect the future. And plus, we are going to get into the devastating findings from Britain's rape gang report that was done independently, not by any government agency, which is itself an issue. So we're going to get into that and the institutional failures that allowed that to continue for decades. And we're going to get into all of that right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome to the Mission Ready Men Briefing, right here on the SHR Media Network, where faith in God sets the standard and masculinity is not toxic. Today is Thursday, June 18th, in the year of our Lord 2026, and we have a lot of stuff to cover tonight. I don't know how much we're going to get through, but let's go ahead and get after it. Real quick, before we get into everything, please be sure to hit like and subscribe and share. Do all the algorithm things. Help us to get out of the big tech tyrants chokehold. We're still growing, so we're very thankful for that. We've had some pretty good growth numbers recently, so thank you. Like I said, once again, and also. This show, the Mission Ready Men Briefing, is on the SHR Media Network, but we're also on an individual channel, the Mission Ready Men Briefing on YouTube and Rumble and all the places. So if you're looking for another way to access it, you can check us out that way. SHR is the home, but if you haven't checked out the individual channel, we would really appreciate it if you did that. All right, let's go ahead and get after it. We got a lot to talk about. So this week, the president signed the a memorandum of understanding with Iran, giving us a 60-day pause in hostilities. And it's, at first glance, when I looked at it, I was not happy. He talked about maximum pressure. We were hitting them with precision strikes. And we brought Iran to the table, and we got this 14-point MOU signed at the Palace of Versailles. It's a framework. It's not a final deal, which is something that we need to keep in mind when we're talking about this. So like I said, there's a 60-day window, and there's promises of billions of dollars in reconstruction funds that are set to get released. Now, one of my major issues with this whole thing is the regime effectively has not changed. Yeah, like I talked about this before, they killed a number of the top leaders, but I believe it's the IRGC leadership that is still in place, and they're hardliners. Now, maybe some of the lower ranks that have stepped up since their superiors got killed, maybe they're a little less so. But again, we're gonna have to just wait and see. But I do want to to get into this, because there's a few things about it that I find interesting, and we're going to get into that. But let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. This is when he signed, and I also found it interesting that it was scheduled to be signed on Friday, and then they moved it up so that President Trump could sign it on Wednesday, which I found interesting. Not sure what it means, but let's go ahead and take a look.
Yes.
Bravo.
Now, what I found interesting is not so much the signing, but Marco Rubio. He has been pretty much absent throughout this whole process, and he's back there behind President Trump looking like he does not really want to be there. I found that pretty interesting.
Good job. Great job.
He and there are reports that he and Hegseth are not really happy about this, and I can understand why. Now, again, President Trump, he got them to the table. He got them to at least he got them to talk, and he got them to agree to this MOU, and that's credit where it's due there, I guess. But this framework, it surrenders some leverage, and that's where a lot of the concern is. Despite it only being a framework, there's still some very vague language, and again, people, especially on the left, have been calling this a complete surrender and capitulation and all this stuff. It's not a finalized deal. They're comparing it to Obama's JCPOA. Again, that was a finalized deal with lots of, well, I don't know how much detail was really in it, but it was an actual deal. This is just a framework, a pause while a deal is actually hammered out. So to compare the JCPOA to this is silly. It's silly and it's ridiculous. And like I said, when I first heard about this, I was not happy. A lot of it had to do with the fact that I was looking at it as a finalized deal and not what it was. And I've spent some time since it came out between the leaked the leaked text and what actually was in the deal. And the administration tried to say that the leaked text wasn't what it was, and there were only really minor differences between what was leaked and what actually is in this MOU. But I spent some time thinking about it and thinking about how President Trump operates. And he always, whenever he's negotiating something, he always starts off with the maximalist position. And then as negotiations wear on, he gets down to what he really wants, but he started with that maximalist position. I don't like the fact that we were led to believe we were led to believe that nothing short of complete surrender was going to be acceptable, and here we are. But again, that's how President Trump operates. We may not like it. I don't like it in this particular instance because of what's at stake. But he is who he is. And I do believe that he always thinks about what is best for the country. And Rick Adams, I'm not defending it. Just stick around and listen, and you'll get it. I am not defending it. I am merely pointing out my thought process on how I came to these conclusions. I think, like I said, I don't like it. We may not like it. He doesn't really care if you agree or disagree. If he thinks that what he's doing is best for the country. And we may not agree, like I said, we may not agree with what we think is best, but that's what he's doing. And then there's the midterms. And I think this is the big rub. Oil was high, gas prices were high, prices are high. And the closer we get to the midterms, the higher the risk of losing the House and the Senate become as this engagement wears on. And what he did here there's still a risk of that with what he did here, because so many people are abandoning, or at least making noise about abandoning Trump after this. But Iran is at least at the table as much as they can possibly be. They can't be trusted by any stretch of the imagination. And if he is sincere in his goal of, or his promise that if they renege on anything, that he'll resume bombing, assuming they don't drag it out past his tenure as president, then we'll just have to wait and see. I do not like how this is playing out. I don't. But I'm not going to just come, like there's a lot of doomers out there that because they don't like the way this is playing out, they're just gonna abandon support for him and the Republican Party. I think that's ridiculous. He's had too much success. Things have been going too well, leaving this aside to just abandon everything else and jump ship and not vote in the midterms. That would absolutely be a disaster. So what's the alternative? Well, there isn't one. The alternative is surrendering to the Democrats, and we saw how that played out with Obama and bribing. do we really want to just surrender to the left and let them be the ones to end the filibuster and let them be the ones to pack the Supreme Court and let them be the ones to completely ruin this country? I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to do that. So let's talk about what's actually in this MOU, because there are some things that need to be addressed and clarified, and I'm not gonna go through every single point, but I will say, I know one of the biggest things that people are upset about is the $300 billion reconstruction plan. Is it $300 billion to help them rearm their proxies? I'd like to think that there's going to be some provisions in place, some safeguards in place to allow that to not allow that to happen. I know money is fungible, but there's been some talk of money being released up front, like $6 billion or something like that. I just saw that just before we went to air, and I didn't get a chance to really dig into it. But I did see that the United States will have control over where that money goes to humanitarian efforts and things like that. If safeguards like that are in place with the reconstruction and development plan, depending on how much scrutiny is actually in place when they do this, it could be okay. Again, like I said, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. They lie. It's in their religion to lie to advance the cause. So again, we're going to have to see what is in the actual final deal when this all plays out. And I'd like to think that we will negotiate something that will definitely be in our favor. Then there's the nuclear, the nuclear aspect of it. That was another thing that President Trump said. They will absolutely not be allowed to get a nuclear weapon. And let's see, which point was that? In point 8, it says that they will, they affirm that they will not procure or develop nuclear weapons. Again, this is a framework. We'll see what the final deal is hammered out. But because the big thing with the JCPOA, if you recall, yeah, it was in the agreement that there would be inspections, but Iran didn't allow any of those inspections to take place. And so there's a report that says that they had zero enriched uranium. Well, they have no way of knowing that because they weren't allowed to actually inspect. Now, in this framework, it says that it's going to be down blended under the supervision of the IAEA. If they hold to that, okay. If they renege on it like they did the last time and every other time before that, that's going to be a problem. And then we'll have to see if President Trump follows through on his promise to start bombing them again. Again, I'd like to think he will. He's followed through on everything he's done in the past. And again, a lot of this is so speculative because this is not the final deal. So as pissed off as I was when I first started to read it, I've calmed down a little bit from that because, again, we have 60 days to hammer out a deal, which, according to this, can be extendable if both sides agree and that there is significant progress being made. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm not going to just abandon the whole thing because of one decision, albeit a major one, that I don't like. And I've seen people compare this to compare Trump and this MOU to Neville Chamberlain and his Anglo-German declaration that he signed with Hitler. I mean, where do these people come up with this stuff? It's absolutely ridiculous. Every deal that is made, even in a temporary framework like this, reflects the values that are enforced by the people in power. We have the power. The United States has the power. And so the question is, are we going to prioritize ordered liberty and freedom and protecting people and confronting evil like the Islamic regime? Or are we going to keep empowering this regime that stones women and hangs homosexuals and persecutes Christians and exports all over the world jihad? I have faith that this is going to end up working out for the most part in our favor. I can't say that. Again, I'm still not a huge fan of it. I wish this framework had some tighter controls. I wish it was written more in our favor and had put more restrictions on the regime. We'll see. We'll see. I just want to pray for the wisdom of the leaders who are negotiating this deal, Trump and Rubio, if he's involved, and everyone else, because this regime that we're dealing with is demonic. And we absolutely need God on our side to make this work. So pray for them and pray for some better terms of this deal, because if we just prayer without better terms in this framework is just spiritual cosplay at this point. The mullahs aren't gonna capitulate just because we give them $300 billion. That's, and I say we colloquially, it's not U.S. taxpayer money. I know that's what they want us to believe, but that's not the case. So let's just take a beat, take a breath, and see where this framework actually goes. All right. Let's we're going to get into something else that's a little something else that's not a little, that's really grim. But first, let's get a word in from our sponsor, and our sponsor for today's show is Carry Girl Gear. So, fellas, she's got standards. And if she's got standards, your gift should too. Carrygirl.com has high quality shirts, accessories, drinkware with designs that she will actually want to wear. No fluff, no nonsense, no nothing, just straight Christian patriotic designs. So if you're unsure, you don't know what she wants, you're not sure what her taste might be, then get yourself a gift card, get her a gift card, take the pressure off. And that way you both win. Carrygirl.com. Respect her taste and get it right. Visit carrygirl.com today. Okay. This week, there was a report released over in the UK about these Islamic rape gangs. And I don't know if I haven't read the entire report. I've read a significant portion of it. It is absolutely horrific. And we've talked about it before. I've talked about it on this show a number of times already. And apparently the things that were coming out that we were hearing were in relation to the investigation that that this report is summarizing. And at 219 pages, it's not really a summary. It's a very detailed look at everything that has gone on over there with respect to this this rape gang situation. 250,000, a quarter of a million, at least a quarter of a million young British girls, some as young as 8, groomed, raped, tortured, trafficked across 150 districts over there, while the police and authorities, social workers looked the other way, and in some cases, according to this report, participated in order to avoid being called racist. And we know what happens. We just saw the evidence of this with Henry Novak a few weeks ago. Well, it happened late last year. The perpetrator was just sentenced a few weeks ago. They will do everything they can to avoid being called racist. I think we should be beyond caring if people call us racist at this point. I've been called a racist. I don't care. I do not care, and neither should you. This independent Inquirer report should be a wake-up call, not just for the people of the UK, but for America as well. Because if you followed me any length of time, you know that I talk a lot about Islam. I talk a lot about how Islam is, they want to take over this country. They want to take over the world. They want a worldwide caliphate. And they do it by conquest. And it's not always going to be at the end of a sword, although they still do that as well. With all the beheadings that we see in Africa, Nigeria, the attempted beheading in Ireland. And as much as Piers Morgan and all the rest of the leftist elites don't want to admit it, it is an Islamic problem. 85, 87 to 95% of the people who've been convicted have been Muslim. And most of them of Pakistani descent. They use drugs, alcohol, gifts to lure these girls and then start the process of grooming them, raping them, torturing them, forcing them to convert to Islam, trafficking them among their Islamic brethren. And the British government, the police, have been complicit. There are reports that there are instances in this report where they talk about cop nights and how cops have driven. In fact, where is it? Let's. Yeah, let's. Oh, it's going to be a little tough to see. Let's see if we can. So this one girl's mother called the police to report that her daughter was missing, mentioned a history of abuse by Asian men, Muslims, and they told her that you can't describe him as Asian because that's racist. They told the mother this. And one of them said, you should just be glad that your child is being taught a different culture. Are you kidding me? This is insane. And on one occasion, a police officer returned this woman's daughter, Fiona, to the house where the abuse was occurring and told the men to have fun with her. Insane. Absolutely insane. There was another one. There've been a few things that have really stood out to me on reading this. And again, I haven't read all of it, and I'm going to. And I think you should read it, because make no mistake, this type of thing can happen here. It absolutely can happen here, because we have politicians just as weak and as spineless as these people over in the UK. We have those same people here. We have those same people who are unwilling to endure being called a racist. We have those same people who enjoy the money that these rich Islamists have to throw around to buy influence. It absolutely can happen here. And on a much smaller scale, it probably already is, unfortunately. I would like to think that there are enough police officers who would not sink to that level. And I don't even know how that type of culture got instituted in any law enforcement agency. It just really blows my mind. But there was one story in this report of a young girl named Michelle, and you can't see it. I'm not going to bother to show it on there. I'll just read it to you. Michelle suffered daily abuse from the age of 13, became pregnant 4 times as a child, endured miscarriages, a forced abortion, and gave birth all while still a teenager. She describes her childhood and future as destroyed, and she lives with PTSD that affects her every day of her life. And another girl, Chloe, contracted multiple STIs, drugged, imprisoned, and now deals with severe damage to her reproductive organs. Lifelong trauma. All because they didn't want to be called racist. This is when I've talked about this in the past, in the past, I knew that it was I knew that it was a scandal. I had no idea. And even as I was following Rupert Lowe and following this investigation, I obviously wasn't seeing everything. And even as I was doing that, I did not realize the scale to which this was such a profound tragedy. It's insane. All in the name of political correctness and diversity. All of that was more important than protecting these kids. And as I said in this report, it says that there have been a few, at least one that I read, and probably more, social workers that participated in the abuse of these young girls. Cab drivers who were using the cab drivers are being used as a trafficking hub. There are reports of men being seen at schools picking up these girls, men who they knew were not relatives of theirs. And so that brings us to the issue of mass migration, mass illegal immigration. Britain's women and girls, and probably to a lesser extent, American women and girls, but Britain's women and girls are paying a huge price because of this cultural rot and regression that's being allowed to happen over there as a result of this mass immigration. The report recommends life sentences for these perpetrators, deportations. I think anyone who was convicted of this should be castrated and deported. And I said that it's probably to a lesser extent here in this country, but we're seeing the seeds of this being sown. We have these enclaves like Epic City and some of the other places in Texas and Florida. We're seeing them infiltrate school boards and put this Islamic nonsense, this poison into our school systems. They're actively, intentionally trying to change the demography. And this is all happening without any pushback from anyone in power. I mean, there are people like me and people like other podcasters and some pretty significant influencers who are talking about it, but that's not getting the job done. And it's not getting the job done because not enough of us are showing up on election day to elect people who will do something about it. BZ says all the time, and I've said it before, Democrats don't win elections. Republicans lose them. Not because Republicans' ideas are worse, but because for some unbelievable reason, Republicans and conservatives just don't vote. It's truly mystifying. It is truly mystifying because just objectively speaking, conservative ideas are better. I don't understand why we see this phenomenon. And it's in places like Virginia and other states where Second Amendment rights are being completely trampled because Republicans don't want to vote. And in Texas, where they're allowing this Islamic takeover to take hold because Republicans don't show up to vote these politicians, these corrupt, on the take politicians out of office. And there's not enough of the good ones to combat the bad ones. And it's up to Christians to speak out on this as well. Too many Christians sit out the political process, even though we're required to speak for the vulnerable, to engage the culture, to call attention to evil. Not doing that, I'm just going to say it the way it is, not doing that is rebellion against God. Period. And allowing this demonic cult, I don't even want to call it a religion, allowing this demonic cult to get even the slightest foothold is, if we're not doing anything about it, it's rebellion. And I don't know about you, I have my faults. I fall short every single second of every single day. But what I don't want to get up in front of the Lord when I get there is to say that, have him to say that I was in rebellion against him and his word. At least 250,000 victims. And there was there's an imam and an actual Muslim who says that it's probably much more than that. That is a systemic failure, allowing these Islamists to impact the culture in this way, it's not just a failure. It's just allowing it to happen. It's complicity. And being afraid to be called a racist, being afraid to be called an Islamophobe. This tragedy in the UK is what fear of man produces, not fear of God. The absolute shame of Great Britain in this instance should be a wake-up call for us here in America. As long as we're allowing these Islamists to build these giant mosques and towns and take over business areas and make all the restaurants halal. As long as we're doing that, we are going to end up in the same situation that they're in over in the UK. All right, let's pivot to back to the United States. And we're still going to be talking about racism though, because there was an incident in Chicago of a cross being burned on Grant Park. Grant Park is the park where Obama gave his victory speech in 2008. And of course, because this cross was being burned in such a prominent location, Mayor Mohawk, media, activists, everybody rushed to condemn the hate, to declare the KKK was still alive and well. Not so fast, my friends. Pump the brakes on that. It wasn't the evil white supremacists that were at it again. It was a gay Asian college student who built a cross, doused it in lighter fluid, topped it with a MAGA hat, and set it on fire. 21-year-old leftist. Imagine that. This is my shocked face. And it's not like a hoax like this is isolated. It's not like this hasn't happened before, because it has. But let's take a look at this, because I'm gonna show you the perpetrator in his own words.
NBC5 Investigates has now interviewed the man who admits burning the cross. University of Illinois Chicago senior Merlin Liu says he knew the implications of a burning cross and had placed a MAGA hat atop the cross, explaining his motivation was to protest Trump administration injustice, not something racist.
How did you land on a burning cross?
Just, it came up to my head one day. I wanted to find something that I could do by myself, like no organization, no friends, no. I did know about this historical relevance beforehand, but I didn't know the severity. How.
You're a college student in the United States, and you didn't know the significance of a burning cross Of course you did. That's why you did it. And anyone who buys this, I don't know what to tell you.
How racially motivated it may seem from what I did, because my protest has nothing to do with race, nothing to do with gender.
Should you have done it some other way?
Yeah, probably.
Merlin Liu is a 21-year-old.
Yeah, you should have. You should have found another way to do it. But you didn't want to. That's what people don't seem to really want to understand. He knew what he was, come on. He knew exactly what he was doing. And when he saw his face on camera as being as being a person of interest, then he decided to turn himself in and get in front of it. But come on, he knew exactly what he was doing. And of course, before any of this, all the race hustlers, all the grifters, all the grievance merchants, all of them were super quick to jump on the racist bandwagon. Not the least of which is Mayor Mohawk himself.
Merlin Liu, who was interviewed by NBC5, who admitted to allegedly burning the cross in Grant Park. During that interview, he seemed to lack an understanding of the meaning behind burning a cross and the implications of that. How concerning is that to you as mayor of, obviously, of a city with a predominantly black population? And do you think there needs to be more education around that?
Well, look, I can't speak to his lack of or understanding of the gravity of what he's alleged of having done. And, you know, again, it's a painful reminder of how hatred towards Black Americans still permeates, you know, in our society.
Merlin.
Yeah, I mean, of course, other than the fact that he was protesting against Trump. But yeah, other than that, I guess you're spot on or something. This guy's a joke, an absolute joke. And they so wanted this to be another way for them to grift and make money and race hustle. And then turns out not so much. But it's not like, again, like I said at the beginning, this is not an isolated incident. I talked about this on my old show, the Liberty Cast, Bubba Wallace in 2020 with the garage noose. Triggered all kinds of outrage. NASCAR issued statements and the FBI even got involved. And it turns out it was a pull rope on a garage door that was on every door in the garage area. But Bubba Wallace, he wanted to go on some race grievance tour and use that to do it. And who can forget Juicy Smollett back in 2019? Noose around his neck, alleged to have poured bleach on him for some reason. I don't understand what that was all about. Claimed in Chicago, a couple of guys beat him up and said it was MAGA country. Meanwhile, turns out he paid his so-called attackers. He was convicted of lying to the police and is still, to this day, says that it happened. In Allentown, Pennsylvania, there was a city councilwoman, or maybe it was a school board member. She found a noose on her desk. During the investigation, they took the noose. The only DNA on it was hers. She was convicted of, I don't know if she was convicted, but she was charged with filing a false police report. And it's been all over the place. Campus nooses that turned out to be shoelaces, or one of them was a paper lanterns, rubber bands. Michigan State, University of Delaware. Everybody's quick to condemn the racism, and then, oops, sorry. Wilfred Riley wrote a book, and he cataloged hundreds of these hoaxes. Some of them high-profile cases, and a shocking percentage of them were fabricated by the supposed victims themselves or activists. There was a gay bar in Chicago that was burned to the ground. Come to find out, the owner of the bar pled guilty to arson and insurance fraud. Black students at the University of Wisconsin Parkside reported death threats from hate groups. They allegedly found a noose hanging from a dorm room door. A Black student at the university confessed to sending the death threats and planting the noose. So the question is why? Why does this happen? Well, it happens because the incentive is there. The incentives are there because the victim status brings attention, brings political power, brings funding, leads to DEI jobs, media sympathy, and it gives the victims, the so-called victims, the moral high ground. And when there's actual racial harmony, when there's healing, that threatens the narrative that America is irredeemably racist and needs constant, consistent equity considerations. These hoaxes thrive because they're rewarded. They're rewarded until they get caught. But how many of them actually get caught? And after the media amplifies the claim, downplays the walk back, what kind of consequences do the hoaxers even really suffer? Academia and politics both profit from this perpetual grievance and tension. And I've talked about this before. When I was growing up, there was almost no racial tension. There was some occasionally, but there was almost none. And because of that, there was no way for these race hustlers to make any money. They weren't talented enough to do anything else. So they had to stoke the flames. I mean, I think I mentioned this last time. What do you think the chances are of a white man being called the first Black anything in this day and age? Bill Clinton showed up in his sunglasses and his saxophone on the Arsenio Hall show. And they called him, I think Arsenio Hall actually said it, he was the first black president. Well, and that turned out to be a complete disaster. But leaving that aside, what do you think the likelihood is of a Bill Clinton-like figure bursting on the scene now and having that happen? I'd say that's less than zero in this particular climate. It's not for Christians. There is no racial tension. There is no racial animosity. Because for Christians, we are all brothers and sisters in Christ. And the color of our skin makes no difference. And even for people who don't consider themselves Christians or who are not followers of Christ, people with an IQ above room temperature understand that the color of our skin doesn't mean anything other than an indication of our likely ancestry. It's of no consequence. It is the least interesting thing about anybody. So, I mean, we have we have to reject hatred, the real hatred that some people actually do feel, and the fabricated hatred that we're being spoon-fed and told we must feel. And I know people will say, well, you just spent a half an hour talking about Muslims and how they're so terrible. The cult that they're in is terrible. And as long as they are following that cult, they are terrible. I will pray for their redemption, but I will not under any circumstances accept that cult as normal and do everything I possibly can to eradicate that cult. Not the people, the cult, the so-called religion, the philosophy, all of that has got to go. Because we see what happens when it's allowed to fester. So the next time you see some hate symbol, whether it's a noose, whatever the case may be, take a second, take a beat, take a breath, and wait for an investigation. Because people saw a burning cross and jumped to the exact wrong conclusion. Real racial reconciliation is going to require truth telling and in a perfect world, an actual reconciliation with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Short of that, people who aren't unwilling to do that, I'll pray for them that they come around, but we have to at least tell the truth. we can't elevate these manufactured martyrs behind these hoaxes. It's out of control. But I don't know. What do you think? Tell me what you think in the comments, because I would love to hear what you have to say. You know what you know where I stand, because I just told you. I still go back to the he didn't know the severity of the symbolism of what he was. Come on. Leftists really think we're stupid. Leftists really think we're stupid. That's the only explanation I can come up with. All right, let's where since we're on this theme, let's stick with well, let's go back to another well, you know what, before I give you the conclusion, let's just go ahead and take a look at another candidate in New York running for, I believe it's New York District 13. And this actually ties the two main topics of this show together pretty nicely. So let's take a look at what's her name? Daraliza Abila Chevalier. Oh, you're going to get a kick out of this, let me tell you. Check this out.
Because I think they are relevant to the race. The first is all deportation is wrong. Now, in Congress, obviously, that comes with a lot of questions about immigration enforcement. And even as Democrats might agree with calls that you have shared to things like abolish ICE, I don't know if they're necessarily there on things like all deportation is wrong. Is that something you still believe?
That phrase, yes. I still believe that all deportations are wrong. And
even if we're talking about illegal entry to the country or someone who may have committed a crime?
So when we're talking about things like illegal entry, we're actually talking about administrative laws, right? We're not talking about...
No, we're not. We're talking about criminal law, criminal violations.
About criminal law.
Let me concede the question of people who have not committed a crime, because I think that that's not...
Illegal entry is a crime, FYI.
Not really the question at hand. Like, if we're saying all deportation is wrong, though, that would seem to also include people who were convicted of breaking U.S. criminal law. Is the deportation of those people wrong?
Get a load of this. Wow.
Yes, and the reason I say that is because we have a criminal system. It is imperfect, but it exists. And it is one that if we accept as the process by which we want to engage with these issues, right, the issues of harm, issues of criminality, what have you, then we need to make sure that it is one that isn't also discriminatory on the basis of where people were born, right? To subject someone who has committed a crime to both a criminal system and then additionally to an immigration system that also detains them in the very same facilities that people who are convicted of criminal convictions are also held.
What difference does that make? It's just, wow.
Right. And then deported and ripped away from everything they know and love. That is also punishment. And that is punishment not on the basis of the crime they committed, because they already served their time when they were...
Did they, though? How many people in these blue jurisdictions serve a fraction of the sentence that they were given? Come on.
process through the
it's
criminal
double
system,
punishment.
it is double punishment. And if we truly believe that double jeopardy is something that is unconstitutional, something that is unethical, something that is against the principles of equality in this country, we cannot subject people to that on the basis of where they were born.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much to unpack with that nonsense. I don't even know where to begin. And she didn't make any distinction if somebody shoplifts or if somebody rapes a minor, rapes a child. She didn't make any distinction. And I'm not going to make a distinction either, because if you enter this country illegally and you commit a crime, well, if you enter this country illegally, whether you commit a crime or not, you should be deported. Especially if you commit a crime, you should be deported. But she couldn't even make that distinction. So she's just going to let these people serve their time while here illegally, get out, most likely before their time was actually served, and continue to walk the streets of this country unfettered as an illegal alien, a convicted criminal illegal alien. This woman is insane. Absolutely insane. But it doesn't end there. It does not end there, because this woman, she's a DSA member. She has been endorsed in this race by none other than Zohran Mamdani. So that should tell you pretty much all you need to know. But there's more, because she actually was at a rally on October 8th, 2023. And just listen to this.
The United States of America, we feel the Palestinian blood. We feel the Palestinian blood. And we stand in solidarity with Palestine. We have the historic responsibility. We have the historic responsibility of defeating Israel colonialism. Israel colonialism. And U.S. imperialism. And U.S.
I have to say, I went to Wikipedia this morning.
Unbelievable. Now, this woman, she is obviously a Democrat, a member of the DSA, and in case you didn't pick up on it, she has also converted to Islam. She is of, I believe, Dominican descent, but she is now fully on board with, well, she has converted to Islam. She is a Muslim. And there she is praising what happened on October 7th, 2023. And the thing is, she is very likely going to get elected. She's in a primary right now against a guy who she claims is funded by AIPAC, which whenever they say that, it just shows how ignorant they are, because the A in AIPAC stands for American. It is an American organization. But details. So not only does she think that criminal illegal aliens should stay in this country and not suffer what she calls double punishment, double jeopardy, because they entered illegally, committed a crime, served their time. That should be the end of it as far as she's concerned. And then there should be no deportation. So what, you commit a crime and become a citizen? Is that what she's suggesting? It truly boggles the mind, the way some of these people think. Like, where does this woman Chevalier get her? I can't even wrap my mind around it, because it's just so utterly stupid. And she's talking about the criminal justice system the way she did. She's also on the record saying that the police should be abolished, that there should be no police. Not reimagined the way some people have said in the past. Chevalier, Daraliza Chevalier, wants to completely just dismantle, dissolve the police. She does not think that the police should exist. And she's probably going to get elected. She is another Islamo-fascist, Islamo-communist. Daraliza Avila Chevalier, Zohran Mamdani, and all the rest of them all across the country that want to completely destroy the country that has allowed them to reach the level of influence that they actually have. She thinks deporting sexual abusers and murderers and robbers, she thinks that's mean. But flooding neighborhoods with those people after they've been convicted of crimes, well, that's compassion, I guess. Their definition of tolerance is just so completely twisted. And she's probably of the same thought process that Piers Morgan and the rest of the leftist elites over in the UK, who think that there's no issue with Islamic rape gangs. And even if they do it, it's not a big deal because the kuffars deserve it. She's a Muslim, so I am confident in saying that that is how she thinks. Christian civilizations built hospitals, orphanages, were instrumental in the rule of law. But these people defend the indefensible while attacking the very culture that allows for her to run for office, despite her complete and utter insanity. And to think that Mamdani could have a like-minded ally in Congress, another like-minded ally in Congress, that's a scary proposition for the people of New York. What we're seeing take place in places like the UK, in places like New York, in places like Texas, Dallas, Houston, Austin, that's not tolerance and that's not acceptance. That is civilizational suicide. That is suicidal empathy. And another question I have for her before we go, not just her, but for leftists like her and Mamdani and all the rest of them. If all deportations are wrong, even for someone who abuses a child in some way, is there a red line for you? Because normal people still have one. We know it's not Nazism because, or domestic abuse because you're endorsing Graham Plattner in Maine. We know it's not terrorism because you support so-called Palestine and the October 7th attacks. And we know it's not child sex trafficking or exploitation because they're supporting this heifer, Daraliza Avila Chevalier. It's utter madness. It really is. And so is there a red line? If so, what is it? Because if it's not any of those things, I cannot imagine how far out that red line must go. Like, what is it that is your limit? All right, y'all. We got about 5 minutes left, and that is going to do it for this episode of the Mission Ready Men Briefing. I am Big E, and you have just watched the Mission Ready Men Briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where you can also catch our great lineup. We have Sackhead Sean with the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. He's taken some time off, but he will be back. Jersey Joe, the Reverb Common Sense, also on a bit of a break, but I have it on good authority that he will be back every Monday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And BZ in the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. He is going to be on in just a little more than 30 minutes from now, so please be sure to stick around and check out his show. I know it's going to be a banger, and I know he's probably going to be talking about the Iran deal. I suspect. And then we have Lyle Armstrong with Beer and Bullstein every Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Please do us a favor, like and subscribe and share the channel, share those great shows, and help us reach as many people as we possibly can and break through, like I said, the algorithm that is trying to keep us from reaching all those people. But that is going to do it for this episode of The Briefing. We are not just here to fill the air. We are here to equip, Christian men and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. If anything that we said here today matters to you, if any of it resonated, please take a second to share it with another guy, bring them into the fight. And if you want to wear what you stand for, head over to missionreadymen.com, click Shop 7 Armors, check out all of the great designs we have over there, like the shirt I have on today. Never leave home without it, prayer. And also while you're there, check out the SHR shop and check out all the designs for all the guys' shows, the t-shirts for all the guys' shows that we have over there. We have the mug, hoodie, and some other stuff as well. So please check that out also. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.